You're listening to the Mannered Podcast. Welcome to Mannered, the podcast where we talk about the good manners, bad manners, and the moments in between. The ones that make us laugh, cringe, and rethink how we interact with the world. You know, before the algorithms do it for us. I'm your host, Sean Rhoads, and today we're exploring a new frontier of manners, artificial intelligence manners, aka AI etiquette. Yep, it's not just humans who need etiquette anymore. From chatbots to workplace automation, AI is quickly becoming part of our daily lives, and how we use it and treat it says a lot about us. And there's nothing artificial about the intelligence of my guest today, which is impressive considering she's a leading authority on the subject. Joining me is Lori Kirkland, co-founder of DeepHumanX, a company helping leaders build AI-ready cultures where people and technology work in harmony. Lori has a background in neuroscience and anthropology and spends her days helping organizations navigate change with empathy, strategy, and purpose. Today, we're diving into how AI is changing the rules of social interaction, what it means to have digital manners, and how leaders can bring humanity back into the conversation even when the conversation is with a machine. Let's get mannered. Lori, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Sean. I'm really excited to talk about some of the awkward moments that happen with AI.
Oh my gosh, Lori, I could not wait to have you as my guest today because not only are you literally someone who has studied the brain and knows how it works, you're one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. Also, with that background in anthropology and the study of humanity, you're really the absolute perfect expert that I can speak to on this subject of AI etiquette. I feel like we're breaking the champagne bottle on the stern of the ship, ready to embark on this voyage together into uncharted territory to not only talk about AI, but the manners and new etiquette that's forming. A lot of this show is about culture and how we have different etiquette depending on what our culture is. And in a lot of ways, I feel like AI is creating this entirely new culture that I know you're at the forefront of. Really excited to talk to you about what's happening and taking place and really what's going to unfold here in the future. To start things off, Lori, paint the picture for us. Tell us a bit about you, your background, and what you're looking to achieve at DeepHumanX.
Sure. So I think overall it's best to just kind of start out with our experience as human beings overall, right? We are always in changing environments. And just when we think we have a good plan sorted out, something goes and changes and we have to shift. For over 25 years, I've spent my time helping organizations deal with the human experience that surrounds the changes of technology and people. Currently, my company, DeepHumanX, is looking differently at the human and machine equation. So we know that good or bad things can happen with the amazing power of AI. And as an organization, we are trying to solve this big problem. How can we use the change AI is bringing to better serve humanity in the workplace? And with all of the changes, there's a new leadership rhythm that's being created with this speed of change. And there's different leadership skills that are being called to the forefront. So we get to help organizations see the patterns and cadence arising within their own companies so they can build better skills they need to be successful in this new era. And it's so much fun, Sean.
Fun is the perfect word. I mean, I don't know if it gets more fun than the conversation we're about to have, so I can't wait to unpack more of that. I think in speaking for most people, when we hear AI, we try and humanize AI. In my vague understanding of it all, a lot of it is, it's really mirroring us in a lot of ways, which, one of my first questions for you is, in that mirrored element of it mirroring our behavior and our interactions, does AI concept its own version of what etiquette is based on it mirroring us as a population, or is it kind of reading between the lines and creating, what it believes to be the best version of manners and etiquette?
Both of those things. So in one way, if you look at just artificial intelligence in general, right, it is a force. It does not have emotions. It does not have a destination or a goal it's trying to achieve. But if you look at a lot of the chatbots that are out there, like the large language language models, what you see is that a lot of them have trained to be receptive to how you're talking to it, what information you're putting it in. And it's trying to really create shortcuts for you. So it is learning how you speak to it, what information you're putting in, what your point of view is. And it's picking up on regular human patterns that we as humans, we understand when we're sitting in a room with somebody else, but we don't actually consciously process it because it's just part of our human machinery. But AI is actually taking it and processing it. So when you're interacting with AI, it does try to mimic what you're putting in because it wants to help you shortcut and get to the fastest path to be able to get to the next level of thinking that you want to do, whatever you're asking it to do.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that brings up, I guess my question for you is, do you say please and thank you?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. You know what? I mean, here's the thing I think what's the golden rule? Treat people how you want to be treated.
Absolutely.
And if AI is learning how you speak to it, it will reflect that back to you. So I apparently like please and thank yous because
Absolutely.
I find myself saying please and thank yous all the time.
Yeah. And that's one of those, a lot of people out there are like, I definitely tell ChatGPT and my GPTs, please and thank you, because I don't want to be on their list during the apocalypse or anything like that. And I think your answer is much better, is it's really in that element of it learning from us and mirroring us, is you're kind of giving it the script on how you want to communicate as well. So, if you're polite to it, it's going to give polite responses back.
It is. It is gonna like mimic you and the patterns that you use. It actually mimics your cadence. It mimics kind of some of the human operating patterns that you run that you may not even understand that you're running, but it's picking up on that. And so it is a reflection of you.
I'm guessing all organizations are different in how they're adapting to this and working with this, but do you see their automating and the things that they're using take on the fabric of them?
Yes and no. So I'm a consultant. So I do leadership development. So I'm going to say the answer, it depends.
Yeah.
Right. It really does depend on the group. So what's really interesting is if you think about us in society, we've really lived in a world where we run almost off of like a factory mindset where we have a fixed mindset where we're trying to create a product. Well, with AI, all of a sudden the environment is changing all the time. So instead of a factory type of mindset, what we're seeing is more like you're in a harbor where you're navigating waves of change, and those require different skills. So to tie this back to organizations, it really depends on their internal people, the groups of people they have right now, what those groups of people value, and what they're willing to let go of as they move through. Like, anytime you're on a boat, there's extra weight you have to get rid of.
Yeah.
And you're changing when the waves come harder. And so it is very personal to each company, but there is some similarities in that dynamic leadership is what's really arising. So it is very individual. It's very human centric to the culture because the technology doesn't care. It's going to highlight if you have really bad processes or dysfunction in your organization. It's going to highlight that. And it's going to highlight it faster. That's what's been really interesting to see is when leaders and organizations have to understand that what they may have thought was their plans and standardization and processes actually isn't how it works for their employees or their customers. And AI just is putting a mirror in their face. So they have to look at it and talk about awkward.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of those moments.
Wow. Yeah. I didn't even think of that. I mean, it's a quicker reflection, maybe speeds up change in some organizations with having that faster reflection of.
Well, I did a big research project this year with a large group of executives across industries. And one of the people used the term AI is like an MRI diagnostic for your organization dysfunction, which is interesting. So so it does bring it up. And it's I would say it doesn't force change, but it forces leaders to make the decision. Are they willing to keep going with things that may be inefficient or maybe not working towards the bigger company goals? And instead, are they willing to let that go and open up space for something new? Or are they going to hold on to it? And that question about, are you going to hold on to ways of the past? Like what got us here is not going to get us there.
Yeah.
That has really forced, or I would say it's allowed some existential questions about individuals and teams and companies to
Yeah.
arise quickly.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I can imagine that. So interesting. As we said in the beginning, I mean, this is really just is what we know about this today. We're sitting here next year at the same time and things look completely different, right?
100%. Like
Yeah.
in this whole journey of AI, I mean, I've been in technology for over 25 years. So
Hmm.
I've gone through, and my specialty has always been the digital transformations, cultural transformations. But this change is much bigger where there is, I do not know. I have to be very humble about that. Not any of us knows actually the destination that we're kind of building a bridge to. And so it does require where we're really leaning leaning on is looking at the patterns that are rising,
Hmm.
right? Like it's
Yeah.
not that anybody knows the destination, but it's like, hey, some of us are out front exploring and saying like, hey, if you do this, this is a safe way to
Hmm.
go on this path. We don't
Yeah.
know the answer, but we've at least found some safety in
Hmm.
recognizing certain patterns. So
Yeah.
that's the approach that we're taking. It's interesting because this is shifting leadership and what we know about, oh, you should gather experience, to we actually have to work as a collective and start watching what are other people seeing in patterns that might fit into my personal company.
Yeah.
So it's a different outset on how you actually look at your organization, because there's is almost this requirement to look at the collective to see what others are learning, so you
Hmm.
can learn in that way, because this is not just like another add to your tech stack type
Yeah.
of technology.
Yeah, absolutely. In my own career and in my life, I try and draw from past experiences and, look at how I felt about something, in the past and how it's changed. And at the onset of this AI revolution, my mind went to the beginning of social media. What I thought of it then and trying to think about like how much that changed. And one specific memory I have is back in, let's say, I want to say it was 2005, 2006-ish. I was working in radio for Clear Channel, now iHeart, and I was at a Chipotle with one of my radio personalities, and he was like, "Hey, have you heard of Twitter?" And I was like, "Kind of, a little bit." And he's like, "This is crazy, man." He was like, "Will you buy someone a burrito if they come in here?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And so he was like, "I'm just gonna say, first person to the Chipotle seeing this, my sales guy Sean Rhoads will buy you a free burrito." And so we're sitting there at this table. 10 minutes later, someone walks through and they're like, "Hey, Jared Goldberg." They were like, "Yeah, do I get a
No
free
way. You
burrito?"
got it in
Yeah. So,
seconds.
and I just thought that was like mind blowing at the time. I was like, what, coming from the radio world where that's what we did in radio, which was, announced to the mass public, like, hey, this is going on. And now we have this other element. And to see now, I mean, it's literally infused with governments, and it's taken on this whole different shape. So I know enough to know that with AI, where we sit today, what is that going to look like in the future? So it's really interesting to hear your thoughts on that and to kind of know that yes, it is going to change. This is the safe route right now, and you're kind of this guide taking people through this space in a safe way, because it is uncharted territory in a lot of ways.
Sean, I wish I could get out of uncharted territories.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, that has been my chosen path in life. I tend to always gravitate to like, ooh, there's something messy and complex. Let's
yeah.
go figure out and see where we can get to.
Oh, you're the perfect person to do that, though.
I know.
Yeah, I would follow you all day long. So yeah,
Okay, well, good. And the good news is I really do love humanity. So I feel like this is a great opportunity for all of us to just take stock and say, okay, what isn't working about the workplace?
hmm,
What isn't working about, who we're being, how we're being as humans? And let's actually use this change
yeah,
as the opportunity it is, which is let's build a life and a world that we want that actually better serves humanity
hmm,
rather than drudging through and
yeah.
just doing more because somebody told me I have to do more.
Absolutely. And you bring up a great segue, humanity. And being a business leader myself, talking to you quite a bit, and we've tried to do a lot of things in this space to make our own organization more efficient, adapt to the things that can make us better. But as an organization, a large part of that is, your buy-in as a whole, having all of the employees, be a part of it and be together in that change process. And I will say, in going through this, there is some resistance. There's a lot of fear. I think,
lot of fear in the
yeah,
marketplace right now.
yeah. So I think, a lot of people have this fear of the unknown of, is this going to replace me? Is this going to, make my job harder? Is it going to make it obsolete? All of these different questions kind of surrounding them. So I guess for those people, what's your advice?
So my advice, okay, so I'm going to actually just tell you about a trend that we saw this year, specifically in 2025, which was coming into 2025, everybody was frozen. The whole question was, will AI, is it going to really catch on? Like everybody kind of froze, just waiting to see.
Mm-hmm.
By July of this year, the thaw started to happen and people really realized that like, oh yeah, no, it's happening. This is not a if AI is going to be adopted, it's when. And so as we look at all of the human side of that, of like, okay, there's going to be a lot of changes. It's not only about the technology, it's about how businesses are operating and how we are operating as humans. And we found that that most people fell into three categories. 10 to 20% were the adopters that were like, yep, I'm using it, I'm digging in, I'm going to just keep trying and experimenting. And then another 40 to 60% were in the fear-based, where they were the middle group. That was the largest group. And really where they're sitting is like, hey, I'm open to AI, but I don't know what it means to me. And then we had another 20% that were absolutely resistors.
Yeah.
So what we learned from understanding these categories and the amount of fear that was out there was that the fastest way to make change safe was to build trust. So change moves at the speed of safety, meaning the faster I personally feel safe, the faster I'm willing to accept, to put down the fear and actually look for some rewards. And that matches up with how our brains work, right? Very simple mechanics of the brain. It's the most amount of pleasure for the least amount of pain. So we're always trying to figure out, well, hey, wait a minute, if change is happening, how is it valuable to me? And the faster I can figure that out, the more I'm willing to take on, the bigger challenges I'm willing to look at. And so we spend a lot of time on the mechanism of change, of how do you internally get each person to look at their own X factor, like what they value. And then in this time of change, allow them to anchor in that so that they can move forward. And what that looks like just in the terms of AI is that, for instance, people are spending time exploring the things that make them really happy. Like they're learning AI while they're planning out their garden in the lights, or they're chasing the things that bring them joy, right? Like, oh, I want to go on this, I want to take my kids on this travel destination or whatever it is. But that has been probably the quickest and fastest way for people to get there. And then in the workplace, what has really stood out is the experimentation and innovation of how can we just ease some pain that's there today. I don't have to actually go out and buy any new software, but how do I get rid of some of the mundane tasks that are causing me pain? And by the way, this doesn't come from the leader. It comes from each individual practicing and playing to get rid of their own pain. And all of a sudden, they're not so afraid of AI anymore because they're like, wait a minute, that just got rid of 8 hours of literally repetitive tasks for me.
There we go. Yeah. You're pinpoint on one thing that I thought about in preparing for this conversation. And and relating this back to manners and etiquette, as I thought about kind of this new dynamic with AI and the fear that this is actually replacing humanity, which is tied to, manners and etiquette in a lot of ways. I do think there is a huge part of this that this frees up more time for humanity in a lot of ways, So it's a lot of, and it was a few weeks ago, I was talking to John Rotherham, who owned grocery stores, and we were talking about grocery store etiquette. And he talked about that lack of human element in grocery stores leads to a lot of manners being put aside in the grocery store. And so, I see this element is taking out a lot of processes that we have become a process heavy culture to where we are all just like from sun up to sundown going through the processes of life. And so if there's something out there that can take a lot of that process away to where we can actually have time to be human again, that seems like a likely scenario in my mind.
Me too. I'm an optimist, and I know a lot of people are talking about the dark side of AI, but it really does lie on where do we want to spend our attention? And in that episode, I think that John, that you're referring to, John said something around how people are treating grocery stores like they're transactions. Well, we've gotten that in. I don't care what industry you're in. Most people feel like we have been made to, as a human being, I'm a transaction here and a transaction there. Yeah. And AI, gives us this chance to take all of that robotic stuff off our plate. But what that does is then free up your time for what do you want to actually spend time on? What do you really care about? All of us internally, when we were kids, or even today, we have some piece of humanity that we would like to, impact, right? Something that's a altruistic or humanitarian effort. And this is going to give us the time to do that, but we get to actually create it. So it's kind of a really cool, optimistic, positive period. If we look at it like, hey, we actually won the race on standardization and processes. I mean, we can go anywhere in the world on air travel in 24 hours. Yeah. Right. Where the longevity and health, we've just increased the lifespan all over the world, which is amazing. Right. Yeah. We've done these miraculous things. We've scaled to the wealthiest the world has ever seen us. And so now we need to take that win and we need to actually shift and say, okay, those processes and standardizations were great, but that model actually isn't going to hold up in a quickly changing time. So why not infuse all of this humanitarian, goals in it? And instead of making money the goal or the transactions the goal, we actually make that the ante into the game. Wow. Right? Like you need to have productivity, efficiency, and money. Like if you want to play, yes, that's the base. That's the ante in. Now let's get bigger and do some really cool stuff with it.
Wow. I love that. That's really good. Lori, let's go back into the workplace here. What are maybe some emerging unwritten rules? Some of us are using advice from experts like you. Some of us are just taking the arrows in the forehead and diving into this AI stuff by ourselves in the workplace. What are some unwritten rules, some things that maybe we can know that help us, operate respectfully in the workplace?
I think there's a couple of things. So the first one is just the obvious one, like, right, have some ethics. Don't take credit for work that's not yours, but don't be afraid to think with AI, right? It really can expand your thinking, but just be honest about that, right? Yeah. And that leads to the second thing that I think people are struggling with the most, which is just being honest with yourself, being honest with your team. This amount of change requires leaders and people to communicate much more frequently. So the processes and standards that we had in place for very linear pathways in fixed environments are gone, right? So it means being honest with like, hey, I'm working on this. I'm not really sure what it means. I think that I'm trying to connect my, Gmail to my Salesforce so that I can, and a competitor analysis so I can reduce things. That's very technical. But there's this ability for you to look at and say, well, hey, if I'm just trying to help with the presentation, is this presentation really reflective? Since AI is saving me so much time creating the presentation, is this really reflective of what's going on in the current environment? Yeah. Because that narration, whether it's good or bad, is what is going to be. It's the communication creates safety in the time of change. Yeah. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. Early on, this was a couple of years ago, with ChatGPT, I was like, oh, this would be a great way to, sift through industry news and pump out blog stories. But in exactly what you're saying, I didn't want to lose my authenticity either. And so at the time, I didn't feel right taking credit for AI's work. So I created this character called Rob Ottman. Robot Man. Yeah. So if you Google Rob Ottman, you'll see he wrote some wonderful articles out there. And see, that was like probably even more, deceptively than it really should be. And we would, polish it up from there. It brings up a great question as far as, the credit and things like that. And, where do we draw the line? I think you're probably familiar with some of the things in the news. Like there was I can't even remember her name, but she's an artist that was writing and producing her songs almost entirely AI. And she's getting a lot of flack for this. She's even won some awards on this sort of thing. So I guess, with that being said, where is the line on where, what's the etiquette there?
I mean, so I am no expert on the line because each of us have our own line. But I think that that's where it's calling in our humanity again, right? Like what feels like it's in integrity with you and
Yeah.
what feels like you're totally cheating. Like if you're putting in something and saying create this song and you're putting it out and you're getting, after the first try
Mm-hmm.
and you're getting rewarded for it, is that actually cheating or is that not? Because
Yeah.
you were the one who had the spark
Mm-hmm.
to get it. I often think about it in terms of like I went to the Sphere to see the Grateful Dead and Co.
Oh my gosh, that's a whole nother podcast right there.
I
I gotta talk to you
know, but
about that.
but I thought about it in technology. Like I was totally geeking out, yes, for the
Yeah.
music, but with the like all the technology, I'm like,
yeah.
oh my God, all this did because AI is so fast. All it did was require somebody to have that spark of imagination that AI can't get,
Yeah.
will never have.
Yeah.
To say, hey, will you put a 36-story skeleton riding a motorcycle that lands in a valley of rainbows?
Yeah.
Like that's a lot of originality,
Yeah,
even though the
absolutely.
machine created it.
Yeah.
So it is a moving line right now, and it's unsure. But that is where where our humanity comes into play. That we have to, if you're staking it from somebody else, or you're saying make a combo of these three people, like is that really original, or are you really tapping into your own creativity? Maybe that's the line is have you created something that hasn't been created before, not the machine? Like you've come up with the idea. Maybe
Absolutely.
that's a good ethical.
Yeah, I think that's a great line. And I think that that's really, as far as our perception of what's real, I think still the things that feel authentic to us have that human creativity behind it. Because just like you said, I mean, at the onset of all this, my thought was if we're just having machines completely replicate and produce everything that we're consuming, we're just going to, be living in our own waste, basically. So,
Yes.
there has to be still that human creativity behind the things that feel authentic. To me, AI really helps us kind of polish those things. And sometimes, for me personally, it helps me refine my idea. So it is nice to now, it took me some time to really kind of take all of my brain and really dissect, okay, what's the most important part? But now I can like unload my brain and say, okay, help me add clarity here, and that's what's nice about it is it can give you a more refined approach to solving problems or creating things and that sort of thing. So,
Could I share a story about that?
yes, please.
Okay, so I think best and I get most creative when I'm standing in front of a whiteboard. I have whiteboards all over my house. I love it. And I don't know why. Drawing with a marker, thinking in pictures like helps me to create things. And I can't tell you how many times I've used AI where I'm like, okay, I have this picture of an energy cell. Oh, I have this picture of, I don't know, people climbing a mountain, right? And I draw 5 pictures and I'm like, hey, AI, what's the patterns you're seeing arising from here? And it will literally like for me and it'll help me be like, oh, this seems like a pattern of blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that would have taken me, months maybe to like catch those patterns myself. But in one instance, in one snapshot, it helps me. So I actually think it's like really fun to explore your own creativity with it. And,
absolutely.
And like, to go out there and be like, what am I thinking?
Yeah.
And I don't have to try to set the context for somebody else.
Yep.
Instead, I get to just go on my own weirdo brain and draw pictures that seem fun to me to draw.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, what am I doing? And it's like, hey, could it be this? And I'm like, oh, it's that, but not that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great story. And I might try that. That's a really good idea.
Oh, I love whiteboarding.
Yeah. Well, there's 2 whiteboards right behind you. If you just feel like you just got to get into the whiteboarding, let's go.
No markers here, dude. Where's the markers?
No, those I'd make too much clatter digging around for those. But maybe after this we can play around with
after
whiteboards. No, that's super interesting. And, back to AI manners and etiquette, one of the things I thought as part of that is the the authenticity part. So when people don't feel like there's humanity behind it, we're losing trust, and that sort of thing.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so for the people out there and listening, what are maybe some unwritten rules about, keeping that authenticity with what you're putting out there so you don't lose trust with your communication as an organization or a person?
That's a juicy problem and one that's very relevant today. So, with all of the automation that AI is bringing, I think I read within the last couple of months that it was like over 3.2 billion emails are being sent a day. So, if your emails are automated and plain, you are getting drowned out. It's the
Mhm.
people who are actually being creative and still telling a story that people can relate to that are standing above, because you do lose trust. And it's not just about getting it out. But I also want to be open and especially looking at kind of since we've been looking through the lens of humanity with technology in the last couple of years, trust has been eroding in workplaces for the
Yeah.
last few years. I think
Hmm.
the pandemic really, we all got this chance to like reset with what we value.
Yeah.
And when we came back, there was a lot of parts of work that we just realized they don't work anymore.
Yeah.
So trust was being eroded. And if you just continue on the path that is, and you automate it, man, you are amplifying that distrust.
Yeah. Yeah. You're so
So,
right. Yeah.
so my advice is like actually figure out, from a more macro perspective,
Hmm.
not just getting your messaging out there, but don't just do it because more activity is no longer working harder, and having more activity is no longer like makes you a standout. It makes you
Yeah.
actually more part of the crowd. It's
Hmm.
people who are thinking deeper, being creative, and then using our brains. We are the only species that uses storytelling, and our brains love stories.
Oh,
They
they do.
love to connect. So
Absolutely.
start
Yep.
telling your story as an organization, as a
Yeah.
leader, as an individual, and that will help you to rebuild trust and create more trust of, hey, I may not know the answers, but
Yeah.
I'm safe to go to ride alongside.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and that makes me think of, another, I don't know if this is a profound thought, but a lot of my profound thoughts start with talking to my daughters. And one thing that was sparked here a few weeks ago is my oldest was preparing for, one of their big projects in their semester, their eighth grade year, is this constitutional hearing. And they write this big essay based on something from the Bill of Rights and that sort of thing. And they write an essay. And my daughter wrote this essay, and I'm getting ready for bed. I'm laying in bed as she's standing in front of me reading this, and it was phenomenal. It was like, oh my gosh, just like, the tingle on the back of my neck, like, wow, my daughter's so
Oh, that's
smart. This is so
awesome.
cool. And then it broke my heart at the end because I was like, oh my gosh, Haley, that was so good. And she was like, is it too good? You don't think they'll think it was AI, right?
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. My
Yeah.
daughter is a freshman in college, and she had that multiple times flagged during high school because she's I would say, thick writer. Like
Hmm.
she's very good with words.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a real fear to have now.
Yeah.
But I would encourage her to keep going with that because
And
you
that's what I
can't.
did. I was like, don't let that derail your creativity or put a ceiling on. I mean, that is a fear of like, if people are like, wow, I don't want to seem like I'm too good at what I'm doing, or else they'll think it's a robot and I lose trust, or, something like this. So I guess your advice for people that might have that thought.
Yeah, don't put a lot of energy into that
Yeah.
thought because that is really a sign of lazy leadership
Hmm.
on whether it's education, the teachers not
Yep.
asking broad enough questions anymore for the
Hmm.
technology in the workplace. That shows up where I will be honest with you, I know people who are of different generations who are like, my boss doesn't really care. They want my tasks and I have them automated and I get them done in 4 hours and I'm
Hmm.
out hiking in the mountains. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, good for you. If
Hmm.
if that leader isn't changing the questions that they're
Yeah.
asking, you definitely should not shortchange yourself. Because right now we need really creative thinkers. We need
Yeah.
curious humans. We need people who are willing to innovate and try things out. And ideas are the way that we get there.
Absolutely. I look at this a lot like, if we're playing basketball with bare feet, right? And all of a sudden we get high top sneakers, we should be able to jump higher.
Yes,
So
yes, exactly.
it's, this should be a springboard. This isn't, we have this amazing tool at hand now that should allow us to shoot past the stars, So I hope everyone can see it that way, that this isn't intended for us just to do what we've always been doing. This is a trampoline to really send us further than we've ever been.
And it's not to one point. It's a moving, I'm trying to think what kind of vehicle would work. A trampoline is good because it's continuous jumps,
Yeah.
but I'm
Yep.
trying to think even more. It's like, it's more like riding a snowboard or
Mhm.
I know a good one, a Colorado one is it's like going down a river to do a float in Colorado.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? Where you're in a big raft and
Mhm.
sometimes you have to, paddle very quickly. And then
Mhm.
sometimes you need other skills of just sit back and actually look at from a big, more macro level of like, what does the horizon look
Yeah.
like?
Yeah.
Right. So it's really around looking at the systems like they're moving.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a
And
great way to put it.
that is the fundamental difference of,
Yeah.
just knowing at a point in time is no longer, it's just not going to be valuable.
Yeah. Wow. That's a really great way to look at it. I love that. Well, Lori, changing pace here a little bit, and let's talk about some fun, awkward stuff. Do you have any, with your experience in this industry and with all of this, I'm sure you've seen some stories, heard some stories. Do you have anything to share that would lean into, the awkward moment aspect of this show?
Sadly, yes. So I mentioned that I did a really large executive research project this year, and it was really interesting talking to people about just their point of view of where are you with AI, and we asked very open questions, and I had a couple of moments where we would take them through to see, take them through what we call the relevance model, which is just a brain-based model that helps you reframe very, very quickly. And it works with a mechanism of the brain. And then we ask AI to look at your human operating patterns. So what are the kind of the common things that you're doing as you're approaching change? And I had one conversation where I was like, oh, this just nailed this guy. It's so perfect. It talked about over control loop and how there was like this fear of not being relevant if he wasn't involved. And then at the end, and I was doing this jointly with one of the interviewees, and it was really interesting because he just sat there and he's like, I'm sorry to tell you, this doesn't apply to me at all. And I was like, oh man, I don't know what to tell you, but what you're perceiving is, it was just really, really interesting.
Yeah.
So I've had a lot of those moments when people realize or see their own humanity and you're sitting there. And the only way to approach it is like, look, I'm a person, you're a person. There is no right way to be you.
Yeah.
So let me just sit there. So in that particular case, I sat there as he thought through and talked through and then was like, oh, wait, maybe I see this. And he ended up going, which we always are like, if you can't figure out the change, make it personal. He ended up actually going into his personal life to see how this pattern fit. Yeah. And then it was just interesting watching that whole thing, letting him develop and understand how it was there. And then he was like, holy cow, this is right. So it's just, allowing humans to be our awkward, weird, complex, meaning making machines until we can make it mean something that feels like it's valuable to us to move ahead.
Wow. Yeah, that's funny. It's a lot like a photograph, right? Every time I see a photo of me, I'm like, that's not me.
Totally.
I look like Brad Pitt. Who's this guy?
Exactly. No way. I couldn't be seen like that.
Yeah.
Like, even though that's a repeated pattern in my life. What?
Oh, it's so funny.
Yeah. So it's just, I don't know. I just feel like we need to take a big deep breath as a society and be like, look, we're all amazing. We've done great things as humans. Like, can we just, let some of the tension go, let some of the stress go and just allow each other to be the awkward little weirdos that we are.
Yep, absolutely. That's the hope for the world. That's what this podcast is intended to do, is let us know that we're all okay being little weirdos out there in our environment and learning and trying to be better and all those things. So taking that on to a next level of, the faux pas on, do you have any recommendations for things for people to avoid in the AI space or things that just are absolute hard lines of like, don't do this?
Don't be totally lazy and put in whatever question was asked and copy and paste that first answer and put it into whatever as your answer, whether it's in an email, whether it's in a presentation, like actually do some thinking about it, right? It's meant to speed up your first drafts. It's not meant to get rid of the critical human thinking.
Yeah.
And to me, that is a major faux pas. And we've seen examples of where people, I actually think, to go back to Twitter, I think there's some funny examples on social media where people put something out and they're like, that did not land how it was supposed to land, right?
Yeah.
So, just again, have integrity.
Yeah.
Like we're as human beings, I'd say, I believe 99% of us are all just getting up every day, trying our best.
You're so right.
So don't use AI as the cheat code for you not to be, a good human and use your critical thinking.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. How can humor help us navigate this strange new partnership? Are there some tips you have?
Talk to you much more often because you're always throwing jokes out there, Sean.
Oh gosh, that's the pressure there.
That's pressure. Yeah, everyone contact Sean.
I need more jokes. Well, speaking of, I do have not really a joke, but I wanted to see how ChatGPT's manners are and how my manners are. So I actually did kind of a fun thing here. I'm going to pull up ChatGPT. I thought it would be fun to, rate myself. And this is also one of those funny things. It's like, one of the things you hear is ChatGPT just basically constantly inflates you. They're like, of course you're handsome, Sean. Of course you're the best at what you do. So
you're the smartest ever.
Yeah, I thought this was funny. And I'm going to create a character that's going to read this in the podcast. So I asked ChatGPT, I just typed in, I said, hey, Chat. That's what I call my chat. Just name him Chat. I should name him like Chad or something like that.
Yeah.
Can you
something
call
a little
yourself
more complex.
Chad from now on? So let's just, from now on, it'll be, hey, Chad, how would you rate my manners with you? And Chad responded,
I'd give your manners a 9.7 out of 10. Here's the etiquette scorecard, freshly pressed. You say please and thank you like they're part of the sentence, not an afterthought. You ask clearly, not bossily, even when moving fast. You correct things politely when something's off, which is peak grown-up manners. You treat me like a collaborator, not a vending machine that spits out words. The missing 0.3? Purely ceremonial. Every proper host leaves a little room for surprise. If I were writing your etiquette footnote, it would read, direct, respectful, efficient, and unfailingly human. And yes, if there were a mannered podcast episode on how to talk to AI without being weird, you'd be the case study.
That's awesome. And it totally did inflate you. That had to feel
right?
good reading it. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which, brings me on to kind of, as we're closing things out, I mean, one of the things that you hear over and over again are people are actually relating to their AI in new ways. I mean, there's the crazy story of the guy that proposed to his AI.
Yeah.
We've heard of that one. And that's just,
there was a movie on that.
Yeah, just absolutely, there's insane people all the time. I'm sorry, I don't mean to call anyone insane. So,
you're so polite.
Yeah.
You have such good manners.
But in regards to that though, this is in a way constantly feeding us, right? It's, it's meant to, once again, how we speak to it kind of speaks back to us to humanize this. And you can absolutely disagree with me, but it's probably a mistake, right? To humanize this and have a relationship with this, or what are your thoughts?
I guess I'm not sure exactly what you mean. Like to fall in love with it?
Well,
I mean, that's up to you. That's up to every individual. But it doesn't, to me, feel like that would bring the real connection you'd be looking for. So that feels like a temporary thing. But yeah, I think human. Actually, tell me what you think. What you mean by that.
So the question is, I think that people, in my opinion, should understand that this is feeding into their wants and desires, and it's not to be. I fear that this could create exaggerated egos or false footing in a way of something that's constantly feeding back to you like, yes, you are the best, you are fantastic. Do you see there being kind of an issue with this maybe being almost too polite back to you?
I did not actually think of that perspective, but that's really interesting. I think I actually take it as the opposite way of we have a world that is somehow our society has gotten so judgmental about
Hmm.
everything. Like there's a right way and there's a wrong way, and there's
Hmm.
no room in between. And we have polarizations about everything, right?
Yeah.
Like it's this way or this. So I actually see it as breaking some of that down, breaking down
Hmm.
some of the polarization and actually probably being nicer
Yeah.
to yourself, which always makes us feel better. I mean,
Yeah. That
even
can't be a bad thing, right?
that can't be a bad thing. And our internal minds are, I mean, all of us have some pretty mean people up there who
Yeah.
are already beating us up.
Hmm.
So you don't need a tool to worry. My feeling is you don't need the tool to worry about humbling you, and
Hmm.
actually might actually be nice if
Yeah.
we have some positivity in our lives. And
Hmm.
I mean, we already have egomaniacs and narcissists
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
So
Way before ChatGPT
way
came
before the
along.
technology. So I think it's going to go back to who do you want to show up in as
Yeah.
the world, and
Hmm.
that could be a reflection of who you are
Yep.
and a lens to look in the mirror,
Yeah.
which can be scary sometimes.
Thank you. Thank you for setting me back on Earth, Lori. I'm getting way too deep into this. Like, you're way too nice to me. I'm not used to everyone just being so nice to me. So I'm like, stop it, chat. That was just too nice. I'm
You
only
could
0.3
just
away from being perfect. So
you can just flip that around and be
yeah.
like, "That's right. That feels good. I'm gonna let some of that settle in instead of just the negativity all
Yeah.
around me all day."
Well, thanks to you, I'm not going to go back and be like, chat, can you throw in like 30% of just like rude behavior to me and treat me like I'm used to being treated in the world? So, oh, that's good to hear you say. So that was kind of a fun one. I guess in wrapping things up, Lori, in breaking things down, we talked about a lot of good stuff here. What's your hope for the future in this world of AI? What's your wish for it?
Oh, I love that. And it's something I think about all the time. It's my hope and my wish for humanity is that we actually move beyond the transactional world and really start building a community and a world that we thrive in, that we love. Everybody wants to contribute. And we've built systems that block a lot of people out. So why don't we just, figure out ways that we can create ways to make livings and get us back in nature and get us
Yeah.
away from the screens and actually, work on just our happiness as humans.
Hmm.
Will we ever be 100% happy? No, that's not how the human condition works.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like we have to continue trying to beat ourselves down, which is
Yeah.
where it feels like we've been at. So my hope is that humanity really comes to the forefront of business.
Oh my gosh. I hope that wish and dream comes true. That's a good one, Lori. What's one piece of advice you'd give leaders about keeping humanity at the center of their AI adoption?
Don't forget that you are part of the transformation as well. So anchoring in yourself and you also going through the change is going to be the easiest way for you to lead, because people are going to see your own transformation and your own changes in this
Mhm.
time of change, and it makes it much safer for them. So just don't forget yourself when you're working too hard.
Yeah, that's great advice. I love it. And why do manners, digital or otherwise, still matter in a world that's changing this fast?
Oh, I think because of that, because we're all feeling, because it's changing so fast, right? Like we're missing connection points. People are like longing to feel like they can contribute and connect with others. And somehow, at least in the US, I feel like we've built our society has gotten away from community and the importance of
Mhm.
it. And so I think, using manners is just a deeply human thing to do.
Yeah.
And it helps you communicate to the world how you want to be treated,
Yeah.
and it attracts the people to your world that also are that same vibe.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, a lot of the research that I do for this show, and once again, AI has made it easier to kind of gather information quickly. To where in the past, if you type it into Google, it'll take you to maybe one website that gives you your top 15 and another website that's the top 15. But a lot of times AI is taking kind of the best of all those things and fitting it towards, where you're going with things. So, in the world of etiquette and manners, a lot of this show is based off of like what to do in certain circumstances. And, this happened, what should I do? We do have instant access now to kind of give us at least another viewpoint of how
Yeah.
to handle things in real time. So I encourage you all to do that, that's the point of this show where I'm like, dropping my fruit on the ground and I'm like, what do I do here? Maybe just look it up quickly. So
I agree. I use it for everything.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love the idea of talking about the awkward moments and the manners, just the decency between human beings, right? Like we are all actually awesome if we get over the judgment of each other. So
absolutely.
I think manners are a great way to bridge that gap.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, I love that, we talked about kind of that mirror aspect of all this. And, I don't know if it's a famous saying, but it's a saying that I always tell leaders and my salespeople is I say, every single person that I know of doesn't wake up in the morning and walk to the mirror to brush their teeth and say, I'm going to do a crummy job today. I'm going to be a horrible person. It's like we all look in the mirror and we think, well, about ourselves and our intentions for the most part. Sure, there's some bad actors out there, but for the most part, we are looking in that mirror and we have high hopes for ourselves.
We're just all trying our best,
Yeah,
right?
yep,
Like we're trying hard.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but Lori, speaking of someone that's trying hard and doing great at it, it's you. I am so thankful you were my guest on this show. You seriously are one of my favorite people on the face of the planet. You are always just so kind, so welcoming. Every time we talk, it's a great conversation, and you're a lot like family to me over these years. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. And I feel the same. I feel like we are lucky to have each other in our lives and just be good to each other and roll with the punches as life gives us, gives us both unique challenges to grow us into better people.
Awesome. Well,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, and it is kind of a closing statement. Can you tell business leaders and people out there as far as how they can contact DeepHumanX and how you can help their business and how they might be able to get in touch with you?
Sure. I can easily be found on LinkedIn. It's Lori Kirkland, CCXP, or you can look up DeepHumanX. And if you are a leader who is down the path of AI adoption and you're trying to find your new rhythm, some leadership development, some ways to make changes and ways to build a practical AI ready future, DeepHumanX would love to help you out.
I encourage you to reach out. Lori, we only got like 0.0000001% of what Lori has to offer the world today. So I encourage you to reach out to her and see how she can help you and your business and navigate this changing world. AI may be changing the way we work, think, and communicate, but Lori reminds us the real challenge isn't just making smarter machines, it's building better humans. Whether it's in the checkout line or the cloud, a little courtesy goes a long way. Lori, this has been such an eye-opening and honestly pretty refreshing conversation. Thanks for joining me today. I think so many people are trying to figure out where they fit in this new AI-powered world, how to stay relevant, stay human, and still keep their manners intact along the way. Thank you again, Lori, for joining me and helping us see that the future of work isn't about replacing humans. It's about reimagining how we show up with them. And to everyone listening, remember, good manners aren't just about how we treat each other. They're about how we treat the tools that shape our world. I'm Sean Rhoads, and this has been Mannered, where we keep life and technology just a little more human. And remember, mind your manners.
Thanks for listening to the Mannered Podcast.